Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Move Crush Count. This is a podcast produced and sponsored by J&L Marketing. I'm your host, Scott Joseph. Today, we are going to be talking about how you create a company of transparency and accountability. I love our new guest, Dan Trinidad. He's the CEO of DealerFox. He's an expert when it comes to data. More importantly, he's an expert on knowing how to take the insights and turn them into action and to be able to do something with that. So he's graciously agreed to come on today, share his experience, his knowledge, his expertise. So welcome, Dan.
Hey, Scott, how are you today?
I am doing good, my friend. Before we begin, there might be a lot of people in the audience, and you're clearly in the automotive vertical.
Sure.
But there are so many things, and what I love about what you do, to me, this applies to anybody, any business that requires any type of data to survive or run their show, which is just about every business, and anything with sales or marketing. And I love your approach to it, but I want to kind of get everybody to understand who you are and
Right.
introduce yourself. So if you could give us a little bit about your background, where did you come up with all this experience and expertise? And
Sure.
we'll take it from there.
Sure. Appreciate it. First, grew up in here, city of Chicago, grew up in the automotive industry. Early on, I sold cars, did backup F&I, a little bit of leasing in my early 20s. And quickly, I was a little tired of the hours that were involved to work inside of a dealership. My dad was a 50-year car guy, and he would always bring me by. And I was just like, let me pump the brakes on that. So what I did was I started investing into software and into data in the early 2000s. And interestingly enough, for about a decade, was in the music industry. And, thought I was going to be, the next, P. Diddy. And so we started investing in software and started managing talent. And I quickly realized that we didn't have an ear for music. You know what I mean? I had a knack for data. So we built a lot of custom software in the early 2000s.
It's quite the difference in careers.
Oh yeah, quite the difference. Another time, I'll tell you some stories on the talent we passed, and that's when I knew this is not the industry for me. But in the early 2000, about 2009 is when we really started to develop a little more data and integrate it with marketing, and it was for various industries, whether it was health and fitness, real estate, automotive. It really didn't matter. We really started diving more into the data. And the reason we weren't specific to automotive at that time is automotive just started investing about 10-15% of their digital spend, of their spend into digital. They're still heavily traditional. So, that's what we did. And then in 2015 is when the industry changed a little bit, and they were 50-50. And that's when, DealerFox was created. And I spent 4 years incubating at one of the top technology hubs in the country. It's called 1871 Chicago. And in that hub, in that incubator, you had literally $1 million worth of education annually. So they would bring in, professors from MIT, all these Ivy League schools. And then we also had mentors, C-level mentors that were in the industry, in the tech industry.
Now, let me ask you, did you have any type of formal education when it comes to data, or was a lot of this self-taught?
But I barely graduated high school, Scott. Yeah. Walked out an entrepreneur and was self-educated, self-taught, a lot of online courses, a lot of, personal investments, and, surrounding yourself with the right people who know what you don't know.
That's another thing you and I have in common then.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And so anyhow, in 1871, you had 200 of the top technology startups. You had mentors, you had education, and you were able to literally talk to people outside of any industry and come up with, processes, methods, and algorithms and solutions to problems. And I think that's where this really grew its legs and really started to take off.
So then what made you think, all right, I'm starting DealerFox. Give me some of your early successes. Give me some of your early lessons you had to learn from.
Oh my God. So many. So early on, lessons learned. I took a whole year and just went in and I provided a service for free. So we were first going to enter the space as a technology company, / marketing. And what we quickly realized is that the dealer principals didn't understand the performance of their investment. So whether we were better or we were worse, they wouldn't understand it anyway. So Went out and I spent a year servicing clients and just trying to understand, abstract their data, go through their processes, and learn how we can impact overall performance. The reason I did that, let me take a step back, is from 09 to 15, every time we brought us a solution to the table on the marketing end of things or social media, and we performed and did our job, and I know you can relate to this, even if we did our job extremely well, if it fell down the funnel and the process broke, whether it was product, process, or personnel, it was reflective of marketing, right? And so they would make a marketing adjustment, they would change it, and they would change us out. And it got, really frustrating. So when I entered this space, I wanted to solve that issue. I knew that was something that I wanted to tackle head on and say, if we can solve the entire sales funnel issue and identify areas where things are not performing, that could better enhance the overall spectrum, starting with marketing.
Yeah. So I find it interesting. So in this year, you're giving away this free.
Mm-hmm.
How long before you realized, all right, this is something that we have something here now. We've figured out, we've learned from all the bugs. I've got general managers now. I've got dealers that are starting to understand the concept, more importantly, how to use it. Is it towards the end of that year? Or listen, I asked this question because I'm curious, because I've released products, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think, wow, this is going to everyone's going to want this.
Sure.
I release it and the concept's good. So you get some early adopters. And then the next thing I know, within 2 to 3 months, I've got a product, because we listen to customers, right? And
Sure.
the feedback.
Sure.
And the next thing I know, I've got a product that is entirely different than what I originally launched.
Sure. To answer that question, it took a year to really start understanding what all the data meant. And I think after a year into it is when we really said, man, we have legs, we have something. Till this day, the $1 million question is, how do we get, some of these dealer, C-level execs and GMs and marketing directors to understand or buy into what we have is so valuable. But I would have to say that what I've learned from the past is rolling out technology, or any product that you're rolling out, you have to roll it out in phases. We could have 10 different features that we want to roll out. What we're doing, with our software, we're rolling out one at a time, and you have to educate. So the education part is huge, or they're going to, we're so far advanced in our own development and our own process, and we understand what the end goal is. But when we're bringing on, new potential clients or customers, we have to walk them through that process so they understand the value of each and every tool.
It's interesting that you were working so hand in hand with dealers and listen, when I started the agency, J&L, the exact same thing, literally, because we'd have these events where just crush it, right? And then I'd go to another dealership and we'll call it an incomplete success. It wasn't that wonderful, but a lot of the data said similar traffic in terms of quality, in terms of volume. So I was going out and I was interviewing all the top dealers that were having a lot of success, the general managers, even their top salespeople. And I was trying to find out things that they were doing before, during, and after each event. I wanted to find things that they all had in common. Sure. So then I could roll it out and make it part of our product and our service and the support that we used. And to me, and I have to tell you, people ask me why I do this podcast. Well, in all honesty, right, the first thing is because I want to help people. I want to provide a lot of information. Obviously, we benefit because of exposure from it. But as I've done this now for 2.5, 3 years, it's the learning from people, talking to people like yourself. I've learned, it almost takes me right back to what I did in the beginning when I was interviewing everybody and learning and growing that way. But it's really, I think that's the biggest benefit. And so when I hear you say that, I just love that approach, because it's not you sitting behind a desk, creating something and then telling everybody why they should love it. You're making adjustments on the fly, and then you've fine-tuned something. So when I ask you, what does it mean to you when you hear a company is transparent and holds themselves accountable, especially when it comes to data? What does that mean for you?
For what it means to us here is transparency, having the willingness to expose the raw data in a dashboard like Google Ads or Google Analytics, so we can review all the metrics, not just a report being pushed out. Being willing to make adjustments according to the data, and then having the ability, to make those adjustments was what makes everything come together and work. None of us have all the answers, and even the data analysts, we're always analyzing data, and we make adjustments, and you may see, incremental improvements. Some of them are home runs, but as long as you can base your decisions off of data and continue to make adjustments, we could all get to the spot we're looking for.
So what's it mean to talk to me a little bit? Because I obviously do a lot of research on you. So talk to me about funnel vision.
So funnel vision is one of the first things that we created. And I think it's a relational analysis between marketing, we call inventory, you can call products, processes, and personnel. And we call that the 4 pillars of the sales process. Marketing sits at the top of that funnel. Marketing has its own funnel, right? But when we work with marketing agencies or clients of any kind, the marketing funnel, when you leverage data and you have science behind that data and you start taking action, the marketing portion of that funnel, it can be improved in as little as 3 to 6 months and be running lean and fit and healthy.
Yep.
When that happens, if you have a product issue right now, we have an inventory shortage, or your pricing is not, in cohesion with the market, or you don't have your photos up, whatever the case may be, that could lead to an inventory issue. What Funnel Vision does, it lets us see the relationship between the two, and we establish benchmarks in between each and every step. You have industry standards. You have, the clients will have their own average or standard, and so it goes from marketing to inventory. Once they're locked in on that product, now it goes into processes, and that's your leads. How many of those people want to do commerce with you? Did they engage you and had a question or entered some information so you can communicate with them? At that point in time, you have to now it all becomes process. If they're engaging you, how many opportunities do you actually have to sell that person, whether it's in store or online? Mm-hmm. And so we just measure all 4 pillars, and then it leads all the way down to process. Process is personnel is the team you have to complete that sale. And we have benchmarks established at each and every road. We have industry averages at each and every road. We have a client average, that we can reference, and we know the peaks and valleys. If we're underperforming, if our current performance is underperforming according to our historical performance and under the industry standard, we have to see what's the differentiator, right? Did we pull back on budget? Did we decrease on staff? Did we change something in the process? There has to be a reasoning, and you have to be able to look at every level of that funnel to make that determination what area you need to focus on.
I love this because it reminds me of back when I was, I guess, more involved in training salespeople, and I could always determine what needed to be coached on based on the objection. So if I have a rep that, and I always said, all right, it's usually the step right before the step you're on, right? That's the problem. In other words, you're making calls, you're not getting appointments. Well, either A, you're not making enough calls. It's the action. It could be a personnel issue, or what you're actually saying in that process or that script or however you want to say it is not motivating or persuasive enough to get the percentage needed for people to send an appointment with you, right? Right. I can go into a sales pitch and all of a sudden you get to the end and you don't close, and it just wasn't a motivating. It wasn't something that the client saw enough value in to justify the expense, right? So usually I can tie that back into, all right, how did we qualify, right? The wants and needs assessment. Are we aligning our product and our service to solve an issue? And there's something you've said in something where you wrote that I read, where you said you can't fix a process issue with a marketing adjustment.
Absolutely, 100%.
And that goes across the board. I can't train someone to close better if they're not selling well and aligning our solutions to what the customer either wants to move toward or away from. In other words, if our customer cares about the quality of traffic and their spend, and all I want to do is talk about how creative our stuff looks, I'm never going to persuade that person. It doesn't matter how great my closing is. I've got to
100%.
sell them. I've got to show them how we can solve problems for their reasons. And you're doing the exact same thing. You're sitting here saying, all right, this is what we're spending. And what I love, you're looking at data differently than most people. When a lot of people hear data, they think of, all right, someone's personal information, maybe name, address, all this.
Sure.
How do I use it for marketing, right?
Sure, 100%.
But you're looking at it, how do I run my business with it? How do I improve my sales funnel with it? Even my marketing funnel with it. So you'll be able to root cause with these triggers. So give me an example of a client where where you were able to find a trigger and alert and make a proper adjustment, and what type of impact did it have?
Yeah, I would say that it happens often. And just to talk a little bit about what you said about you cannot fix a process issue with a marketing adjustment. Usually when someone doesn't hit their goal and they're investing tens of thousands of dollars per month trying to achieve that goal, the first trigger they pull is marketing. They want to make that adjustment because they want that instant impact, right? And what the funnel always lets us know is where in that funnel is the area of concern. We hit our objectives in marketing and in product. A lot of the times we see owning the process, being able to accept the data and make an adjustment in the process, and owning the process. It could be as simple as eliminating software. You might have too many pieces of software that are trying to do the same thing, or adding a piece of software to help automate a process. A lot of the times we find the solution in the process area. And for instance, we had a client, industry average leads to showroom visits should be minimum 32%. I have clients, that start off at 20%. They have a hefty top of the funnel. Marketing is generating visits and product views and leads, but we can't get people in store. So what we do is we analyze and assess what in that process issue is different than maybe what a client that's performing well in that area. And we start making the recommendations and we follow up. And once that changes, you will see internally a dealership, or any of the dealership that we're talking about, a handful of them will go from 100 to 115, 120 cars without any marketing adjustment. They'll increase 15 to 20 sales per month just by addressing a process issue on how someone handles a prospect, right? Someone comes in, they don't buy the vehicle the first time, they leave, they don't follow up. You got 15 misses, 1 be back. That percentage right there increases 10, 15, 20 sales per month, just making sure that same person isn't feeding off the door, but he's actually servicing the clients that came in. So those two little process issues, especially when you have shortage of inventory, if you don't own that process, your competitor will. And you're going to continue to overinvest and miss the boat. So I would say almost all the time, we see opportunity in a process and helping our clients improve. I have a client, Scott, that I just wanted to share with you. They're at over 52% on average, a little bit over, from leads to in-store to sales. Let me get there. No, leads to visits. Every lead to visit, he's over 52%. Industry average of 32%.
So every lead that comes in, he's got 52% show ratio.
Yeah. Show ratio, not appointment set, leads.
Right. Actual show.
The actual show. Yeah.
In your opinion, what fixed that? Obviously, okay, you found a situation where it must have been lower than that. So what adjustments might have been made along the way? It may have been more than one.
It's
usually to that.
It's usually more than one. First of all, listening to the client, what they're asking for. If they're asking for a feature on a car, they're not looking for a price. So having the proper information or communication with the prospect. Secondly, your time of response. Is your software helping automate the processes so you can respond in a timely manner? Third, do you have the proper information in a repository ready to go? Do you have your brochures ready? Do you have the information? So just servicing the customer. It's as simple as listening and responding actively instead of just trying to sell.
Yeah. So give me an example. All right. So you've set these benchmarks, and then there are alerts when, if I'm hearing you right, when you've got when you're looking at the entire funnel and all of a sudden my something's wrong in my processes, whatever you're measuring at this point. All right. And it triggers an alert, correct?
Correct.
All right. So what are some of the benchmarks that you're actually measuring, especially when it comes to process?
Okay.
What are the?
So we'll have a couple of benchmarks when it comes to process. First thing we'll have is a funnel benchmark. If we're performing below our 32% and 50% closing ratios, we'll get an alert. Now, just so you understand, the alerts come from the 1st to the 10th. After the 10th, that's our average. We'll get an alert if we're not pacing by the 10th. Reason being is you need enough data during the month to actually start to take an action on. And what's cool about this is in-month adjustments. You don't have to wait till the postmortem data end of the month to look at it. We get an alert, and then we say, why is this underperforming? Another thing we look at is in terms of a sales rep. What we do is we take the average. If a salesperson has 15 ups, store visit, customers that came in, what's against the store average? Is he plus or minus? How many closes do he have? Is he plus or minus? What's his closing percentage? Is he plus or minus? How many B-backs did he have? How many is he plus or minus? How many B-backs sold is he plus or minus? So we have, let's say, 15 salespeople on the floor, and we have 5 people coming up in the red. In-month adjustment, the sales managers can instantly say, they usually have sales team, hey, listen, you need to take a pause. I need you to follow up with your customers. I actually have a client that says, you keep taking the front door. I have someone else who's going to follow up with your customers. You're not good at that. You guys could split the deals, but we have to tend to these people who came in the first place looking for a vehicle. So we do that with BDC and lead handling, and we also do that with sales people on the floor. So those are process opportunities against your store average of who's underperforming and how you can go ahead and make an adjustment.
So I assume when you're taking on, first off, how long does it typically take to onboard somebody?
I would say it used to be 4 to 6 weeks. Now it's about 2 weeks.
All right. And are you establishing when you establish the original benchmarks? I get you're constantly probably adjusting those based on a store's performance. But when you set the original ones, do you go by an industry average, or do you in that 2-week period, do you establish what the store is actually doing and then set the mark? Or
we do a historical data review. So if it's not a client, they just want to see where they're at, we'll do a 90-day historical data review. If it's an actual onboard of a client, we'll do a 2-year data review. So we could pull data from 2 previous years and start to establish what their average is and what we're looking at now. Now, obviously it's a different time. So you have to make an adjustment for, COVID and inventory. So we kind of take the 2 years prior and look at an average. But no, we always look at historical data within the store. And then we'll also share that extra benchmark of what an industry average looks like.
So currently we're streaming live to LinkedIn, to a couple different Facebook accounts and a couple YouTube accounts as well. And we got our good friend, you've met Michael Porro at Business Bourbon and Cigars. He's made a comment. He's got a comment coming in here. He says, I'm flying at 45,000 feet in the air, listening. I will listen to my favorite interviewer, which I'm not bringing that up because of me. The reason I'm bringing this up is we have to question whether Michael's flying private or commercial.
Got to be private. He's on
so that's the only reason I'm bringing it up.
Yep.
So Michael, let us, if you can still hear us, let us know what you're flying, big man. All right. So let me ask you this question. So what do you think are the most common mistakes business leaders are making when it comes to data?
I think one, they look at data. And they usually say, I have a guy who does that already. And usually that person is the marketing director who's wearing 10 different hats already, right? That marketing director is responsible for curating content, making sure their specials and incentives are out, so on and so forth. They usually have the wrong person in the position who needs to analyze the data, needs to add science to the data, and then translate that data so you can take action. I think it's 2 different positions. I think you need to surround that marketing team with also data people or data team. I think the combination of the 2 will give them the success that they're ultimately looking for. So I would say that's probably the most common mistake that's being made.
Outside of, because when you cover like personnel performance and processes, is everything you're doing right now limited to just on this pretty much the front end or the sales team, or do you also do this on the back end in service?
No, we mainly it's done in the front end. We don't really have a service offering now. Actually, I've had tons of service clients prior to entering the automotive space. Just haven't dipped in it yet.
Okay. And so everybody that you're measuring right now then is on sales, correct?
Correct.
There's no F&I, there's nothing like.
Well, no, we do measure a little bit of F&I performance.
Right.
We also look at data for banks. How many, especially for secondary, how many submissions, which ones are buying it, what's our submission to close ratio.
Nice.
So,
what about teams that have separate BDC versus sales?
Same thing. So we have a BDC performance.
Yep.
And we have a sales performance. And if the BDCs are internet managers as opposed to BDCs, we still have to measure the metrics.
And for people that are not in auto, we're talking about business development centers, people that are handling, whether it's incoming phone calls, they're making outbound phone calls. Sure. They could also be handling leads that are coming in online as well. So any type of lead submission forms. So it's fair to say anybody in the system has a number, sometimes sure. more than one number, correct?
Sure.
All right. Sure. Which I love. So because it's much easier to hold people accountable when everybody in the company has a number that they have to treat, try and aspire to. And I'm going to butcher this story.
Okay.
All right. I'm going to butcher this story. But there's an old, and I'm pretty sure it's true. I think Charles Schwab, and he was managing a factory at some point. I can't remember the name of the company. But he came in, and I think it was either the night crew or the day crew, the night shift or the day shift. And he asked them, how many, whatever they were processing, how many did we complete today? And somebody hired out 6. So he took on chalk on the shop floor and wrote a big number 6.
Okay.
All right. He left, didn't say anything. So the next shift comes in and they start asking, what's this number? All right. And they said, well, Mr. Schwab came in and asked us how many we completed, and then he wrote that down. So what do you think happened? The next shift erased the 6 when they were done with theirs and wrote 7. And then the next day, the next shift came back in, saw that their 6 was gone and it was 7, and it quickly got up to 10, and the productivity started increasing.
Absolutely.
And I know that's a very simple way to explain it, but it also does demonstrate the power of a number and everyone having a number and understanding what they need. It goes to accountability.
Sure. It's right? Awareness. Absolutely. As long as you make them aware, and they could see something, they have something to manage in front of their face on a daily basis, not the end of the month. It's a motivator for people. Now, right. If I could finish a story, I started earlier, a funny part of that story, my first client, I was so excited to bring in these numbers and say, here's an area of opportunity for these sales reps to learn, and an area of opportunity for these managers. This manager's closing at a higher ratio. I submitted the information to the owner. I won't say the owner's name. Been around 50 years, and I'm excited. He calls me into the dealership the next day. I'm going to meet the GM and the staff, because I was working directly with the owner at this time. And I walk in, the GM pulls me aside and he says, hey, MRF, are you this guy from DealerFox? And you're telling me I'm not doing my job? And I was like, I didn't say it. So the very first experience of bringing this data to the table for me was an opportunity to improve performance. And what we learned was every dealership had the same issue. No one was looking at this data. And I literally got my head, bitten off, and everyone in the dealership hated me and it felt like they were throwing stones at me. It was an experience. So, the very first experience bringing this information to the table taught me a lesson that you have to set expectations. You got to manage expectations before you present this data. So
but that comes from in any business, right? Yeah. When you don't learn that until you do, and you get punched in the nose a few times and you get bloodied and you realize, all right, I need to change this approach. We used to have our reporting at the agency. We used to call it an ROI report.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
yep.
Could have been the dumbest name ever created for reporting data back to a dealer. Yeah. We quickly changed that to just tracking report. We're just tracking the traffic, the people we targeted with stuff, and here's what they actually did.
That's good. So, some people still have an ROI report. I look at them all the time.
So Sandy Cerami throws in a comment on YouTube. Scott and the great Charles Schwab graduated high school together. So Sandy is normally on he's a frequent guest on Move Crush Count, a good friend, and he knows I'm defenseless. I can't fire back at him without him here. The people that are listening to this as from on a podcast standpoint won't understand what's going on. So just for the record, Sandy is a lot older than me. But he actually looks a lot older than he actually is. So I just want to throw that out there. But
That's great.
So all right, so
But he plays better music than you do. Don't forget that.
okay. So what would you say? Let's walk through some steps here. All right.
Yeah.
If you're going into a business, and quite honestly, I don't care. Let me ask you, why only auto? Are you able to take this format out into other verticals?
Yeah, I think we started at auto because when you deal with franchises, there's more of a template approach where you can try to assess an issue as a whole and try to fix it. We've had every intention of branching out to other industries, and we had software that was internal for the last 4 years. And we finally said we have enough data, information, and actions to be taken to make it front facing. So I think after this year, once this data is fully implemented, is when we're going to start looking outside of this industry, because all you have to do is switch out inventory for product. I have in this building I live in, I have business owners that are outside the one's in the sports industry, and he wants to use the software already, and he wants to take it into the restaurant industry. So we do have some opportunities down the road, but first you want to perfect it. In one area, you want to master it, you want to own it, you want to see the success come across, as much as possible.
And for those of you starting out and have products, a couple things I want to point out, and I love what you just said. You've got to perfect it, right? But that didn't stop you from creating it and doing it.
Correct. You
And
got to
so,
start somewhere.
yeah. So you still went out and did something. You realized maybe I don't have enough value here, or I'm unsure what it's actually worth. So I'm going to do this for free. I'm going to work for a year for free.
Absolutely.
Not counting the time and investment that you probably made creating it.
Sure.
You're in the hole right out of the gate, but you're willing to work for free, which, gosh, there's so many people listening today that want instant gratification or feel they're entitled to something right now. And they don't always understand that, Cardone says something along the lines, don't try to get rich quick. Try to get rich for sure.
Absolutely.
And your approach is that, right? I'm going to sit here. I'm going to offer it for free because I know this. If I can provide this much value and it doesn't cost them anything, I'm providing value, right? And now I'm going to learn and listen. The things I see that you've done so successfully is you got into stores. You paid your number one focus was listening to their feedback, making the adjustments on your product to make it better. And you're continuing to do that right now.
Correct.
So what you're saying is I still got some things I can keep cranking away and nail this down. And then when I roll it out to other industries, it's going to be 10 times easier than what I've got now.
For sure. I mean, absolutely. Drawing a blank, Scott.
Listen, Sandy throws in here. He says you're spitting the truth, but I leave him drawing a blank all the time, Sandy Cerami. Sometimes I have to say, Sandy, are you still there? And then, wakes me back up.
I got a text message. I turned my phone over. I looked away for a second. But everything you're saying is spot on. And being an entrepreneur at a young age taught us how to put our best foot forward, right? We didn't ever ask for anything. We had to go out and prove ourselves. And
Correct.
Even on my team today, before I bring anyone on full time, they have to be willing to make an investment and show me what their value or worth is. We don't like to. We like to give everyone an opportunity, but we want people who a little bit of an old school mindset, who can prove and show their value, because that's the only way your team is going to stay hungry and grow. I've always taken that approach. I don't take anything for granted. My team members don't take anything for granted, and I think that's a good formula for growth.
So if you're going into a client, let's do a 3-step process here.
Okay.
All right. What is step one? Let's say, forget your product for a second.
Okay.
Let's say I'm a business leader who wants to measure and have funnel vision, as you like to speak, where I'm measuring not just the marketing, but I'm measuring the entire process all the way through. So from marketing to closing of the sale, right? Okay. And of course, we could continue that. You could continue that measurement through retention percentages and frequency of purchases after that. good business doesn't stop with the first transaction. We want clients, not customers, right? So clients are lifelong, customers are transactional. So that measurement can continue on. But for the sake of this discussion, just getting it up and running and getting through the first transaction, what is the first step a business owner should do?
Well, the first step I think a business owner should do is write down what they believe their strengths and weaknesses are, right? Before they look at any data. And I usually tell them to take the 4-pillar approach. Look at the entire sales funnel: marketing, product, process, personnel. Of those 4, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses, and why? Second thing, we recommend you do is now go look at your data and see if your data supports your theory, right? Does your idea of your strengths and weaknesses of your company reflect what the data is telling you? And oftentimes it doesn't. And then third thing you want to do is you want to listen to your data. No matter how well you know your industry or how good you know what the answer is, and you have a gut feeling, you just know it works, you have to start making adjustments according to the data. And when you start making those adjustments and you let your ego go, and I have 20 years experience, I know it works, and you start looking at the data, you're going to start to see improvement. But you have to be willing to go through that process and trust the process in order to get the result that you're looking for.
Yeah, so you're basically trying to educate and train clients to be a data-driven company.
Sure,
so
absolutely.
When I hear about when I went the show of this interview in terms of how to create a company of transparency and accountability, transparency means we're very open as a company, right?
Sure.
We have no problem as business leaders saying, you know what, our marketing's letting you down. Here's the numbers.
Yeah.
It's not producing the quality of traffic that you need, or we're not answering the phone or responding in a quick enough time frame. And so I assume, and walk me through this. Let's say, for instance, the show ratio is not where you need it to be. All right. So I've got enough leads coming in, but the people that actually convert to sale or show is very low. So obviously you're looking at, it's not the leads. All right. Yeah. Assuming that
they assume it's quality. They have an intent to engage, right?
Correct. So at low funnel lead, that high quality. And now my show ratio. So obviously there's something in that, either the process or the person at this point now, right? It's either one of the two.
Or both.
Yeah. So what are you tracking? I hate to always sit there, and I think this goes back to, and the reason I'm bringing all this up is our instinct is, well, the marketing's not working. You're looking at data and letting data drive decisions.
Absolutely.
All right. So what would you do if what typically shows up when the appointment ratio is down? What's the most common problems there?
Just let me preface that with every dealership has a story. Every story is different. And then their data tells us the story, right? So then we go and we dive in. It's different for every dealer because that lead process area could be software, right? They just don't have the right software in place that's going to give them the time of response needed, because every lead that comes in has competition. You have competitors are looking at 5 other places. It could be as simple as not having the right responses set and ready to go. You may have a junior level rep who just started, doesn't know the product as well, doesn't have the answers, and doesn't have the repository of information ready to set out. It could be a bad response. They're not listening or answering the question. There's a multitude. It could be just a person who just blows through the lead and just not interested. They're there to collect an hourly paycheck and don't care too much about the incentive. It could be too much software. So it's different. It's to answer that, it's not an easy solution or one approach answer. You have to, what the data tells us is there's an issue. After we see that issue, then we dive in. And then we'll start looking more at their software. Then we'll start measuring the performance by individual.
Brian Toole has a great comment followed by a good question. We all know data, and this comes in from YouTube. We all know data can be manipulated and you can make it say whatever you want. How do you educate dealers to properly understand and then take action on their data?
Well, the first thing you have to do is you have to enrich the data. The CRM is not a perfect piece of software. The CRM, when we first started, we could see a CRM with data that's up to 40% inaccurate. It doesn't merge accurately. People put in the wrong information. There's a lot, and it wasn't built to be a reporting system. It was built to be a communication system. So you have a database for communication and a database for reporting. And when you're trying to pull over those reports, calling two different databases, and they were structured differently, they weren't built to scale 15 years ago, a lot of antiquated software, you have an issue. So first thing you need to do is you got to clean the data up. During our process, we enrich the data, we put it through a filter as best we can, still not perfect, so we can get a better look at what that data looks like. Number two, when you're looking at data and analytics, you have to understand the difference between a soft conversion or a hard conversion. Anytime you set up goals in analytics or AdWords, you have to understand what those goals are, right? Yep. Those goals can be, just a visitor to your site or a visitor to a VDP page. Well, you can run an ad campaign that goes straight to the VDP page and has an 80%, 90% bounce rate. So you have to understand what those goals are. And you always want to go back to hard conversions. Hard conversions are form fills, chats, phone calls. Those are things we can grab and hold on to. And when you look at the funnel, you see it all the time. Man, I got so many users and so many VDPs, but my lead, store visits, and sold isn't where it used to be when I spent less money. Okay. So, understanding what goals, what data sets to look at, enriching the data is the first part of the process. Because if you're making decisions based on the data that's just in your CRM, or you're looking at, you guys are extremely transparent. I work with you guys, and you'll set hard conversions. And you'll
say that again.
You guys are very transparent, and we set hard conversions and we establish those benchmarks. And when you're able to do that, then you have at least a starting point, a path. No data is perfect, and our data isn't perfect, but we believe it's the best opportunity to make a better decision. So I guess that's where it starts.
So Brian, if you're still with us on YouTube, does that help answer your question? If you got a follow-up one, let us know. Just put it in the comments. So if anybody's got any questions out there, fire away. I can pull them up. I assume I'm getting them all from whether it's Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube. Let me ask you this question. So
sure.
When you go around, what percentage of businesses, and I know you probably don't, well, you might know, you're a data guy, I don't know. What percentage of businesses are actually tracking the key numbers the way they need to, or setting up a process to track this the correct way? I mean, I have to assume it's low.
Yeah. I would have to say that to be fair, there are some very talented marketing directors out there that I'm really interested in, have an opportunity to work with. I say that because I haven't run into a client yet that's tracking the data the way we feel it needs to go. And it's not to say that we're right, but I haven't seen it yet. I have seen some dealerships, in terms of analytics, have a real nice setup where that attempt is there, but it's just mainly measuring marketing. So until you start incorporating the whole entire sales funnel, you're only getting a glimpse of what your performance is. And I haven't seen anyone set up that funnel in place yet. And I could be being biased because, that's the funnel that we're using, but let's say 2 out of 50, if you want to remember.
Yeah, so 4%. So how do you like how quick that math was? I mean, that was pretty
quicker than mine. I need software to do the math for me.
You gave me a very easy one, so I thought I had to shout it out there.
It's pretty accurate. Yeah, very, very few, far and few.
All right, so Brian, I'm going to assume either you are no longer with us, or that answered that question well. What other thoughts do you have that would help motivate when you go into a client? All right, everyone likes data in the sense of what it spits out at the end, so they can see, oh, this is happening. But the thought of discussing data, and I'm in marketing. And so we have to talk marketing all the time, right? Or data all the time. Sure. And so your prior career in the music business was much more exciting, all right, than crunching numbers. So my question to you is, when you're going in, what are some of the key, like, if you're able to go in and show people, hey, I'm going to track this for you, this for you, this for you, what are the key what are the main objections you get? What keeps you guys from getting
I think that it's not so much an objection that a mindset is we like to work with C-level and GMs directly and marketing directors.
Yeah.
But the C-level and GMs are a little intimidated to have this conversation, one-on-one, or without someone else there. They believe that data analytics and data, science or whatever the data in front of them is above their pay grade. And what we try to let them understand, it's not. It's numbers and percentages. You're a C-level exec and a GM. This is exactly how you manage and run a company. So I think is just not understanding what data really is, and being intimidated by that data where they think it's all marketing. I think that's the first, bit of pushback we get, and they're kind of scared to put their toes in the water. It's education. It boils down to educating them and letting them know data's their friend. Data's simple. There's a 50,000 foot view. You could read numbers and percentages, and if something's off, you can contact the department and say, this is not working, fix it.
Well, and I just think that, you go to any business leader out there, and a lot of them might have the misconception of like, they all want to track, they all want everyone to have a number. They all want to manage by data. A lot of them go by gut instinct, which is a mistake. I say that just from what you speak, the knowledge you speak when it comes to data, just from a marketing standpoint of who to target, when to target them, with what type of message, all that type of stuff matters so much.
Sure.
And over the years, I mean, I have to tell you, we've done everything from we are very data driven when it comes to running our company, which is what you're really talking about, which is what I love about this, because it's a different approach. But from just a marketing standpoint, just from that niche, data is so critical. I can tell you back in the day when we used to do a lot of direct mail, and all that's mostly switched to digital now. But back in that day, we didn't make decisions, but as the data got better, we started seeing volumes of 10, 15, 20,000 pieces a month. I could get the same results for 2,500, 5,000 pieces.
Sure. It's more targeted now.
Correct.
Yeah, you have the data to support it. Yeah.
And so the smarter and the more access to data that we have. But one of the things I would think that you go into, and you're sitting there saying, all right, I'm going to track all these things. A GM might be sitting, or a dealer might be thinking, I wouldn't even know where to begin. To me, I would like you as a business, because as an owner, I'm sitting there thinking, I need to track all this stuff, but where do I even begin? I don't have time to add another project.
Sure.
And it's not an area of expertise to me.
Sure.
Who's going to track it? Who's going to make sure it's up to date? Who's going to make sure that, and then how are we making sure that we actually look at it? Or am I setting up another process that goes through our store and eventually is forgotten, and we waste a lot of time, which is what I think is appealing to what you're doing.
Sure.
Because you take a lot of that burden away from them.
100%. What's funny is a lot of the lack of performance comes from, a dealer goes to, business bourbon and cigars, and they're looking for a solution to their problem, right? They want to put out a fire. The GM told them they have a fire. The marketing director told them they have a fire. They find a solution. They invest in a software, and in 6 months down the line, they have the same problem, and they're upset and they're pissed off. Wow, this is still not working. A lot of the times it's underutilization. During the onboarding process, they communicate with the new solution that they were investing in, and after the first month, they got 50% of the information they needed to perform. After month 2, maybe 10% more, and after the third month, there's no more communication. And the person that they invested in, the company they invested and hired, it's not their company, right? So they're tired of reaching out and getting no response, and so they just said, heck with it. They're not measuring it. They don't understand. They're paying us anyway, so they let it go, and it goes to die. Where we come in is we measure that and we make sure that doesn't happen. A lot of their initial investments can work. A lot of the software works. A lot of the marketing companies are transparent, willing, and able. And a lot of these things can take them to the destination they want to go. But who in a business has the time, like you said, and experience to tackle these projects? And I think that's just a missing part of the puzzle is, there's an area which is, undiscovered, unknown, that needs to be managed and handled. And another thing I wanted to point out, Scott, is everybody should have checks and balances, right? So I'll get a marketing company every now and then. And why do you have to have a data company involved? Well, can't allow them to police themselves either. It's not that they're doing a bad job or they can't do a better job. Is that we're 100% independent. We don't provide any of the services, and it's hard to manage and monitor yourself the way you guys do, right? You're out there. You're saying if something don't work, you're going to let your client know. Well, not many people are like that. And I guess the analogy I could use, if someone comes into a dealership and your top salesman takes that up, right, and that person leaves without a TO to a manager, what happens? He's gonna get a talking to. Does it a couple of times, they're gonna exit him out. It's the same thing with your software investments, your marketing investments. You need to have your checks and balances. You need to have someone who's there working with you to make sure everything is being accounted for. Same thing internally. I mean, so it all works together.
Yeah. So let me ask you this question: for people that are trying to track the right numbers and maybe don't have aren't working with you, right? They're trying to do it on their own.
Mm-hmm.
Where do they waste most of their time?
Oh, I think in marketing, Google Analytics, they're looking at soft impression or soft conversions. They're looking at impression share, right? They're looking at the goals that are set up that they don't quite understand, and they're looking at metrics that just don't move the needle. I think that's where they waste the majority of the time, and just understanding and simplifying those data sets into simple, hard conversions and understanding the funnel will help you save a lot of time, frustration, and investment.
All right. So we're coming up on an hour here. What, talk to me, or I'll let you kind of finish out the show here. What would you do, or what would you say to business leaders, entrepreneurs out there that are trying to level up their business, take it to a new level? How can they use data to do that? What would you say to motivate them to take this more seriously and really lean into this?
I would say, one, don't be intimidated by the data. Educate yourselves a little bit that you have a tool that will allow you to take actions and make investments with a clear conscience. Whether they work or not 100% of the time doesn't matter. At least you have a benchmark set. You have an established number that you're trying to achieve based off data. And I think most entrepreneurs could sleep at night knowing that they made, they made an investment or made a bet on something that they had a reason for. That's number one. And two, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. Right. So,
right.
You got to get away from the gut feelings and the I know, and it worked in the past, and the expert, within the company that just knows everything. Trust data. Don't be intimidated by it. There's so much information online that you could research that help you get started. If you have any questions, you could email me directly or the company. We're happy to offer free information.
Why don't we let's do that real quick. Hold on a second. All right, give me your. You want to put your email up here?
Go ahead. 100%.
All right, what do you got here?
Dan at DealerFox.com. It's a tough one.
We are going to put that up. All right, Dan at DealerFox.com. All right, so if you've got any questions about how to set this up yourself, or you want any tips, you have some questions that you might have in terms of what not to do and what to make sure you do. Dan is the man. He is an expert on this. As he mentioned earlier, we actually work together on some mutual clients. We work together in those, and that goes very well. He's a supporter of Business Bourbon and Cigars. We appreciate his past support with that as well. I want you to visit him. Look up DealerFox.com. I assume that's your address, correct?
Yes, it is.
DealerFox.com. Yeah. Look them up. Outstanding company. Dan's got an incredible reputation. So we appreciate you coming here on Move Crush Count and sharing your expertise on this. What I want people to get out of this is, and the reason when I thought, I want to interview you is because I think more companies that can become better at being transparent within their own teams, it makes it much easier to hold people accountable. And I also think, because a lot of times accountability, when you go by gut instinct and stuff like that, and you just kind of get upset with people and you don't have data to support and show them, here's why this is happening, here's how we can fix it, and things like that. I just think it makes it a lot easier, and it's much more, it creates better culture as well.
Sure. Absolutely.
All right. So
All right.
everyone, follow Dan, follow us. Make sure you subscribe to movecrushcount.com on YouTube. Follow us and subscribe at movecrushcount.com as well, not only on YouTube, but we're on all the channels, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. Follow us everywhere so you can be kept up to speed on all new episodes, and we'll see you the next time. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
All
Have
right.
a good one.